The wheels of the airport trolley squeaked as I stood there, alone, watching my son drive away with my daughter-in-law beside him, their laughter fading like poison in the air. My suitcase sat by my side, but my heart was heavier than the granite house they had just stolen from me. They thought the deed I signed made them owners. But I knew something they didn't. They had just buried themselves alive in a trap made of my quiet patience. If you love justice stories, like and subscribe, and tell me where you are watching from. My name is Margaret Lane, 68 years old, widow of a carpenter, mother of one son named Ethan. People in our small town used to say I raised him with love bigger than the hills that surrounded our home. I gave him everything, education, savings, even the house my husband built with his hands before cancer took him from me. After Henry died, that house became my memory. Every brick carried his laughter. Every window whispered his promises. When Ethan married Clara, I welcomed her like a daughter. She was charming, with her neat blonde hair and a voice sugar-sweet when she wanted something. She worked as a real estate agent. "We'll take care of you, Mom," she used to say, holding my hand at family dinners. For years I believed her. Ethan had always been ambitious. He dreamed of owning big things, cars, companies, attention. Clara encouraged that hunger, whispering dreams of city life and money into his ear. Still, I thought they loved me. Why wouldn't they? I helped them with their wedding bills, even gave them the down payment for their first apartment. When they had their first child, I was the one who babysat, cooked, cleaned, and smiled while they were out networking. I didn't mind. A grandmother's joy is in small hands tugging her apron strings. But over time, I began to notice glances between them, strange, calculating ones whenever I mentioned my will or the house. Clara once said, half-jokingly, "If anything ever happens to you, we'll take good care of the house, won't we, Ethan?" He laughed, but his eyes flicked away too quickly. One evening, as the sun painted gold on our porch, Clara brought up the idea of putting the house in Ethan's name to make things easier for taxes. She smiled when she said it, the kind of smile that hides a knife. I hesitated, of course, but she had rehearsed every answer. "It's just paperwork, Mom. You'll still live here. It's only for legal protection." Ethan nodded behind her like a shadow. I wanted to believe them. After all, trust is a mother's last illusion. The day I signed the deed, the pen trembled in my hand. I remember thinking how cold the ink looked against the paper. Clara hugged me afterward, all perfume and pretense, whispering, "You won't regret this." For a while life continued as usual, or so it seemed. But I could feel something brewing under their politeness. A tension, a greed that crackled like static. I didn't yet know that the paper I signed would become the rope they tried to hang me with. 1 month later, they invited me on a family trip. A short vacation, Clara said, to celebrate the house transfer and new beginnings. I packed my best clothes, baked cookies for the grandchildren, and smiled like a fool. I didn't know that flight would take off without me. And the deed I signed was not what it appeared to be. Everything I had built, every memory of Henry, every dollar I had saved, was about to turn into their weapon. But they had forgotten one small detail. I am my husband's wife. And Henry taught me never to build a house without a secret foundation. When the plane lifted off and my phone stopped ringing, I finally opened the envelope Henry had left me years ago. Sealed, marked for when you are betrayed. The envelope was yellowed at the edges, sealed with wax that had cracked over time. I held it in trembling hands at the airport cafe while families around me laughed, their voices slicing into my silence. My reflection in the glass window looked older, smaller, like the world had shrunk me overnight. But as I broke the seal and unfolded the letter, I felt Henry's voice rise from the paper like a whisper from the grave. "If you ever doubt Ethan's heart," it began, "remember that love can blind even the wise. The house is yours, Margaret. Always yours. What you signed years ago was only half of the truth." I read those lines again and again until the meaning sank in. Henry had foreseen this. He had hidden a clause, one only our old lawyer, Mr. Whitman, would know about. But before I get to that part, let me tell you how it started. The day my own son left me behind like lost luggage. It was early morning, the sun barely a breath above the horizon. Ethan and Clara had insisted we arrive at the airport early. "We'll have breakfast there, Mom," Ethan said, helping me with my suitcase. "You deserve some rest before the trip." Clara smiled from the passenger seat. "We'll handle everything, you just relax." I remember thinking how kind she sounded that day. Too kind. At the airport, Ethan parked the car close to the terminal. They took my passport, saying they'd check us in. "Wait here, Mom," Clara said. "I'll bring the boarding passes." She walked off with Ethan, their backs to me. Minutes turned to half an hour. My coffee went cold. I kept smiling at strangers passing by, expecting them to return soon. But something in my chest, some old mother's instinct, began to ache. Then my phone buzzed. A message from Ethan. Just one line. "We decided to go ahead, Mom. It's better this way. Take care." I froze. Better this way? My fingers shook as I called him again and again. Straight to voicemail. I turned in circles in that crowded terminal, scanning faces that blurred together. The announcement for their flight echoed through the hall, and I knew they were gone. I wanted to collapse right there, but pride wouldn't let me. My husband used to say, "A lane never breaks in public." So I stood tall, even as my heart caved in. The cab driver who took me home said nothing, but I could see pity in his eyes. When I reached my house, their house, as they now called it, the locks had already been changed. My nameplate was gone. "Can I help you?" the neighbor asked from her porch, her voice cautious. "This is my home," I said. But the words felt hollow, drifting away like smoke. I sat on the front steps until the moon rose. That was when I noticed something odd, a letter taped to the mailbox. Clara's handwriting. "Margaret, please understand this was for the best. You'll be taken care of. We've decided to sell the house and move to the city. You can stay with your sister for a while. Love, Clara." Love. She ended it with love. The same word she used when she lied. That night, I slept in the church shelter. The volunteers gave me a blanket and soup. I remember the sound of rain against the roof, soft but endless. Every drop felt like a memory washing away. The next morning I called Mr. Whitman, Henry's old lawyer. He answered in his deep, gravelly voice, surprised to hear from me. "Margaret? My goodness, it has been years." "Henry left me a letter," I said. "He mentioned you and something about the deed." There was silence, then a slow exhale. "Ah, so it has come to this. What do you mean?" I asked. He paused before replying. "Your husband was a wise man. Come to my office tomorrow, and bring the letter. You will understand everything then." I spent the night rehearsing what I would say. But no words could prepare me for the truth that waited. The next day, in his dimly lit office filled with the smell of old books and coffee, Mr. Whitman opened a metal drawer and pulled out a folder. My husband's handwriting was on the cover. "Margaret," he said softly, "you never signed your house away. You only signed a temporary trust transfer, something your husband designed years ago. The ownership remains with you unless a specific condition is met." My heart pounded. "What condition?" "That your son must keep you in residence and care for you. If he fails, the property reverts to your sole name immediately." For the first time since the airport, I smiled. A small, broken smile, but real. Henry had built more than walls in that house. He had built justice into its foundation. Mr. Whitman leaned forward, his eyes gleaming behind his glasses. "But there's more, Margaret. Your husband left behind something even Clara cannot touch. A document that could ruin them both if you choose to use it." Mr. Whitman slid a sealed envelope across his desk, the weight of it heavier than gold. "This," he said, "is your husband's contingency file. He created it right after he finalized your estate plans. He told me to keep it safe until you came asking, if you ever did." I ran my fingers over the envelope. "What's inside?" "Evidence," he said. "Financial records, witness statements, even recordings. Henry suspected your son's wife would try to manipulate the inheritance one day. He wanted to ensure you had a weapon if they ever turned against you." My throat tightened. "He suspected Clara?" Mr. Whitman nodded. He said she was charming but hollow. The kind of person who smiles while measuring how much she can take. For a long time, I just sat there. The clock ticked. A pigeon fluttered outside the window. It felt surreal. My late husband had predicted every step they would take. I looked up at the lawyer. "Mr. Whitman, if I use what's in here, what happens?" "You'll expose them," he said quietly. "And you'll get everything back. But be warned, it will destroy your relationship with your son forever." I whispered. That relationship was already buried the day he left me at that airport. That evening, I took the bus to a motel on the edge of town. The neon light outside flickered against the curtains as I tore open the envelope. Inside were documents, bank transfers, property evaluations, and a USB drive labeled Claire_evidence. I plugged it into my old laptop. The screen came alive with folder after folder. One file stood out, voice_record_1220.mp3. I pressed play. Clara's voice filled the room. "She'll sign anything if we say it's for her benefit. She still trusts you, Ethan. Just make her feel guilty about the taxes. Once it's in our name, we sell, move, and that's that. Easy." Then Ethan's voice followed, hesitant but complicit. "What if she finds out, Clara? What if she won't. She's old. By the time she realizes, the papers will already be through. Trust me. The recording ended. The silence that followed was deafening. My hands trembled, but I did not cry. My tears had run dry weeks ago. What I felt instead was a strange calm, like a storm's stillness before it breaks. Henry had known. He had armed me. I stared at their voices echoing in my mind and whispered to the screen. You thought you buried me, but I was only planting roots. The next morning, I visited my old friend Ruth, who ran a small diner near the town square. When she saw me walk in with my suitcase, she gasped. Margaret Lane. Good heavens, what happened to you? I smiled faintly. Betrayal, Ruth. The kind that teaches you who you are. She poured me coffee and sat across from me. Tell me everything. When I finished, Ruth slammed her hand on the table. They did what? Yes, I said softly. But I am not finished yet. Ruth's diner was a hub of gossip and goodwill. I knew that if I wanted the truth to spread, it had to start there. I told her bits, just enough to stir curiosity. The town had always loved a story, especially one about moral justice. Within a week, whispers began to move through the streets. Did you hear about Ethan Lane's mother? They say she's living in a motel while he's trying to sell her house. Poor woman. But I heard she's fighting back. Those murmurs reached Clara faster than any lawyer could have delivered a letter. 2 days later, I received a call from her. Her voice dripped with false concern. Margaret. Oh my goodness. Why didn't you tell us you were still in town? We thought you went to your sister's. I let a pause stretch. You mean the sister who's been dead for 10 years? Silence. Then a nervous laugh. I must have misremembered. I doubt that, Clara, I said. But I do remember your voice. Very clearly. She went quiet again. I imagined her hand tightening around the phone, her eyes darting to Ethan. What are you talking about? Let's just say Henry kept better records than you expected. Her tone sharpened. If you're trying to accuse us of something, I'm not accusing, I said evenly. I'm confirming. Then I hung up. That night, I received an unexpected visitor. Ethan stood outside my motel door, rain dripping from his jacket. His face was pale, his voice trembling. Mom, please. Clara told me you're angry. We thought we were helping. Helping? I echoed. By selling my home behind my back. He rubbed his forehead. You don't understand. Clara said we could pay off our debts and buy a new place. You wouldn't have to worry about anything. And where would I live, Ethan? He looked away. We thought you could stay somewhere cheaper for a while. I took a step forward. Do you hear yourself? You left me at an airport like I had excess baggage. I panicked, he shouted suddenly. Clara made it sound like it was the only way. Then you chose her words over your mother's heart. He lowered his head. Please, Mom. Don't ruin us. I studied him for a long moment. I won't ruin you, Ethan. You did that yourself. But inside, my plan was already forming, layer by layer. As Ethan left, I opened the second document in Henry's file, a legal amendment signed and witnessed, one that gave me not just ownership of the house, but control over every cent Ethan had ever borrowed in my name. The game had only begun. The morning after Ethan's visit, I sat by the motel window watching the rain stripe the glass. Every drop felt like a countdown to something inevitable. I had the evidence. I had the leverage. But revenge, I told myself, is not about rage, it's about timing. Henry used to say, if you want justice, let the guilty build their own stage. And Clara, bless her greed, was already building it brick by brick. 3 days later, I learned through Ruth that Clara had listed my house for sale. The sign out front had her company's name on it, Clara Lane Realty, bold and smug. She was even boasting about the sale at her office, telling colleagues she had convinced her naive old mother-in-law to hand everything over. I smiled when Ruth told me. Good, I said. Let her think she's untouchable. That evening, I walked to the local library and used one of their public computers. I drafted a calm, meticulous email to Clara's broker, attaching copies of the trust deed and Henry's amendment. My message was polite but firm. As the sole legal owner of the property, I hereby demand you remove any sale listings immediately. Further transactions will be treated as fraudulent and subject to legal action. Margaret Lane. I haven't sent it yet. Timing again. I wanted Clara to dig deeper before pulling the floor from under her. Instead, I printed the email, folded it neatly, and slipped it into an envelope for Mr. Whitman. He would know when to deliver it. Then I called a number I hadn't dialed in decades, Sarah Jenkins, Henry's niece, a brilliant attorney who lived 2 towns over. She had always admired her Uncle Henry's foresight. Margaret, she said in surprise. I can't believe you called. How are you? I've been better. I said with a chuckle that hid my ache. I need your help, Sarah. Quietly. I told her everything. The deed, the betrayal, the recordings. When I finished, she was silent for a long time. Then she said, I'll handle it, Aunt Margaret. But you must trust me. This will hurt before it heals. Pain doesn't scare me, I said. I've already been through the worst. Over the next week, we built the plan like architects of reckoning. Step 1. Let Clara believe the sale was proceeding smoothly. Step 2. Let Ethan feel the pressure of the debt he didn't know I could collect. Step 3. Reveal everything in public. Sarah arranged the timing perfectly. Clara had organized a pre-sale open house for potential buyers, an event she planned to film for social media to promote her real estate brand. A sentimental country home, she'd called it. The irony nearly made me laugh. On the morning of the open house, I dressed in my late husband's favorite shade of blue. The one he said made my eyes look calm before a storm. I stood by the mirror, tucking my hair behind my ears, and whispered to my reflection, let's finish what they started. When I arrived at the property, the driveway was crowded with cars. Strangers milled around the front yard, sipping wine and nibbling on hors d'oeuvres while Clara fluttered from guest to guest with her perfect smile. She froze when she saw me. Margaret, her voice was brittle. What are you doing here? Visiting my home, I said evenly. Her cheeks were drained of color. This event is private. Oh, I know, I said. But you see, I still live here. Legally. Before she could respond, Sarah appeared beside me, briefcase in hand, her professional calm slicing through the tension. Mrs. Lane, she addressed Clara. We have some urgent documentation to review before any sale discussions continue. Clara's smile faltered. I don't understand. You will, Sarah interrupted gently, handing her a folder. Inside were copies of the trust deed, Henry's clause, and the amendment transferring all rights back to me after Clara's failure of care. The crowd began whispering. A few phones lifted, recording. Clara flipped through the papers, her eyes widening, her hands trembling. This can't be real. It is, I said softly. Henry made sure of that. Her face twisted into fury. You old witch. You planned this. I smiled. No, dear. You did. I just waited for you to finish the script. That moment became the talk of the town. But it was only the beginning. Because Clara screamed and the guests backed away in discomfort, Ethan pulled into the driveway, his timing as tragic as his choices. He got out, confused by the scene, by the murmurs of fraud and theft. When his eyes met mine, he knew everything had changed. As Sarah began reading aloud the clause that nullified their ownership, Ethan shouted, Mom, please don't do this. But I had already made my choice. The storm had arrived, and it was carrying my husband's justice in its hands. Ethan's voice cracked through the murmuring crowd. Mom, stop this. Please. We can talk, just not here. But I didn't stop. I had been silent too long, swallowed too many lies, watched too many nights fade while they plotted my humiliation. Silence had been my prison. Not anymore. Sarah turned to the gathered guests, her tone steady but firm. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for this disruption. But it appears this open house was held without the true owner's consent. Mrs. Lane, she gestured to me, is the rightful proprietor of this home. Cameras clicked. Whispers spread like sparks through dry grass. Clara tried to snatch the documents from Sarah's hand. You can't prove anything, she snapped. Sarah raised an eyebrow. Oh, I can. And if you continue, I'll be forced to play the recordings your husband provided. You do remember those, don't you? Clara froze. Her lips parted, but no sound came. For the first time, she looked truly afraid. Ethan stepped forward, his voice low. Mom, please. You don't understand how desperate we were. The debts, the bills, it was never about hurting you. I faced him fully, my heart aching at the sight of my only child begging. Desperation doesn't justify betrayal, Ethan. You could have asked for help. You could have trusted me. Instead, you chose deceit. I thought you'd say no, he muttered. Then you didn't know your mother at all. A heavy silence followed, the kind that bends time itself. Even the wind seemed to pause, waiting. Clara recovered enough composure to sneer. Fine. Keep your crumbling house. We'll leave. You think you've won, but Ethan and I will build a new life, without your bitterness poisoning it. She turned sharply toward the driveway, but Ethan didn't move. He stood there, staring at me, torn between guilt and shame. Go with her, I said quietly. You made your choice. He swallowed hard, eyes glistening. I didn't mean for it to end like this. It ended the day you left me at that airport, I replied. This is just the epilogue. Sarah gently guided me toward the porch as Clara stormed off, shouting something about lawyers and defamation. I let her words fade into the wind. She could scream all she wanted. The law was not on her side anymore. When the last guest left and the yard was quiet again, I walked through my home. The smell of lemon polish still lingered. The photos on the walls, Henry holding baby Ethan, our first Christmas, our wedding day, seemed to watch me with silent approval. Sarah joined me inside. "You handled that with grace," she said. "I handled it with truth," I replied. "And truth always wins, eventually." She nodded. "Clara will try to fight, but she has no legal ground. The trust and recordings make this airtight. If she pushes further, we can take it to court and expose her publicly." "Oh, she will push," I said. "She always does. But that's what I want." Sarah tilted her head. "You want her to?" "Yes. Because I'm not finished. Not until Ethan sees who she really is. He still believes she's just desperate. He needs to see the monster behind the smile." Sarah exhaled slowly. "Then we'll let her dig her own grave." That night, I sat on the porch with a cup of tea, and the weight of victory pressing gently on my chest. Yet it was not sweet. Revenge never is. It is bitter like old coffee, necessary only to wake the soul. I thought of Ethan, his trembling hands, his broken voice. I still loved him, God help me. But love doesn't mean surrender. In the darkness I whispered, "Henry, it's almost done. Just one more move." The next morning, I opened my laptop to find an email from Clara, angry, venomous, and full of threats. But buried between her insults was a single line that made me pause. "You think you've beaten me, old woman, but you have no idea what Ethan signed in your name last year." And just like that, the final act began. Clara's email glared back at me like a snake coiled on the screen. "You think you've beaten me, old woman, but you have no idea what Ethan signed in your name last year." I stared at that line for several minutes, every word slicing through the calm I'd built the night before. What could she mean? What had Ethan done again in my name? I forwarded the message to Sarah and called her immediately. "Sarah, she's threatening something." She said Ethan signed papers using my name. Sarah sighed on the other end. "Do you have any idea what kind of papers?" "No. But knowing her, it's not taxes or charity work." "All right," she said. "Forward everything. I'll have my assistant cross-reference your signature with public records. If anything was forged, we'll find it." I thanked her, but even as I hung up, a strange stillness filled me. The kind that comes before lightning. Because deep down, I knew Clara wasn't bluffing. 2 days later, Sarah called back, her voice tight. "Margaret, I found it. They refinanced the house using your name before the transfer. Ethan signed documents claiming you were co-owner on a joint mortgage. The loan is massive and unpaid." My breath caught. "So, if they default, the bank could technically pursue you," she said. "But we'll stop that. The forgery makes it criminal." I pressed a hand to my forehead. "Criminal," I whispered. "My own son forged my name." Sarah's tone softened. "I know this is painful, but you need to stay strong. I'll prepare a case. Clara's about to drown in her own lies, and Ethan, he'll finally see the damage." I hung up and sat alone at the kitchen table, staring at the faint scratches Henry had made while building it. His laughter once filled this room. Now only silence. "Why, Ethan?" I whispered. "Wasn't love enough?" Outside, the wind carried the smell of rain. The kind that comes right before a storm washes everything clean. 3 days later, it began. Sarah filed a formal complaint for fraud and forgery, attaching the recordings, the deed clause, and the false loan documents. The police called Clara in for questioning. The local newspaper caught wind of it. Prominent realtor under investigation for defrauding elderly mother-in-law. It spread fast. Ruth called me from the diner, her voice gleeful. "It's all anyone's talking about. That woman's face is on every screen in town." But I wasn't celebrating. Justice was coming, yes, but so was heartbreak. Because I knew Ethan would be caught in the crossfire. That evening, I got the call I had both dreaded and expected. "Mom," Ethan's voice was hoarse, broken. "Why did you do this?" "I didn't do anything," I said quietly. "I just told the truth. You could have called me. We could have fixed it." "Fixed it?" I cut in. "You forged my signature, Ethan. You left me homeless. You sold the only home your father built." He fell silent. I could hear him breathing, shaky and uneven. "She said you'd forgive us if we just explained," he murmured finally. Clara," he said. "She told me to take the loan in your name. She said you wouldn't mind if it meant helping the family." "Helping?" I said bitterly. "Helping you bury me alive under debt." "Mom, please," she lied to me too. "I didn't know." "Oh, Ethan," I interrupted, my voice trembling with exhaustion. "You always knew." You just didn't want to see it. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Then he said something so quiet I almost missed it. I think she's leaving me. She will, I said. Because that's what people like her do when the money runs out. His silence was heavy, filled with the sound of realization cracking open like thunder. The next morning I woke to the news. Clara had been arrested for fraud and falsification of legal documents. Her company had cut ties. Her real estate license was suspended pending trial. I poured myself tea and watched the sunrise paint gold across the porch, the same porch she had once claimed as hers. The phone rang again. Sarah. She's out on bail, she said. But the DA is pushing charges. The media's running it non-stop. And there's something else. You might want to come to the hearing tomorrow. Ethan's going to testify. My heart tightened. Testify? For her or against her? Sarah hesitated. That's what we'll find out. The courthouse was small, but the tension inside was enormous. Cameras flashed as Clara entered, hiding behind sunglasses and false composure. Ethan followed a few steps behind, looking gaunt, his hair disheveled, his eyes hollow. I sat quietly in the second row beside Sarah, hands clasped, watching as the prosecutor laid out the evidence: recordings, forged signatures, fraudulent loans. Clara sat stiff, her jaw clenched. Then, when Ethan took the stand, she finally looked afraid. Mr. Lane, the attorney said, did you knowingly sign these documents under your mother's name? Ethan hesitated, eyes darting toward me. Our gaze met. For a moment, I saw my little boy, the one who used to bring me dandelions from the yard. Then he spoke. Yes, I did. But Clara told me to. She said it was temporary. She said it would all be fixed later. The courtroom gasped. Clara spun toward him, whispering furiously, Ethan, what are you doing? He didn't look at her. Telling the truth. Tears blurred my vision. It wasn't a victory I felt, it was something heavier. Something that hurt and healed at the same time. Clara leapt to her feet, shouting, You spineless fool. You were nothing without me. The judge's gavel thundered. Order in the court. Ethan lowered his head as officers restrained her. I felt no joy watching her rage, only pity for the emptiness behind her eyes. The hearing ended with the charges moving forward. As we exited the courtroom, the crowd's whispers followed us like a wave. Did you hear? Her son turned on the wife. Justice at last. Poor woman. Imagine being betrayed by your own child. Outside, the sky broke open with rain. Ethan walked toward me slowly, hesitant, as if approaching something sacred. I'm sorry, Mom, he said, voice trembling. I don't know how to fix any of this. You start, I said softly, by not lying again. He nodded, eyes wet. Can I come home? I looked at him, this man who had once been my boy, and said, Not yet. But one day, maybe. Then I turned away, letting the rain hide my tears. As I walked toward Sarah's car, she handed me her phone. You might want to see this. On the screen was a new headline. Exclusive. Clara Lane threatens shocking revenge on ex-husband and mother-in-law in leaked jail call. The storm wasn't over yet. The headline glowed on Sarah's phone like a warning flare in the dark. Exclusive. Clara Lane threatens shocking revenge on ex-husband and mother-in-law in leaked jail call. My stomach clenched. Clara's voice, captured from that recorded call, played beneath the headline. Her tone was sharp, trembling with fury. They think they've humiliated me, but they've only lit the fuse. I'll ruin them both, if it's the last thing I do. The reporter's commentary followed. Authorities confirm Clara Lane made these statements from county jail following her fraud charges. Family members have been advised to take precautions. I handed the phone back to Sarah. She won't stop. Sarah nodded grimly. She's angry, cornered, and desperate. That's when people like her are. The most dangerous. That night, I couldn't sleep. The wind outside moaned through the trees like a restless ghost. Every sound, the creak of floorboards, the rustle of leaves, made my pulse quicken. I sat up in bed, clutching Henry's old photograph. He used to say, evil doesn't die when you expose it. It dies when it has nothing left to feed on. So I decided to starve it. I called Ruth early the next morning. I need a favor, I said. Something that might stir a little public memory. She chuckled softly. You want the town talking again? Yes, I said. But this time, the truth needs to come straight from me. By noon, Ruth had arranged it. An interview at her diner, live on the local community network. The headline they teased online read, Margaret Lane breaks silence, betrayal, forgery, and the hidden deed that saved her. The small-town station expected maybe 100 views. Within hours, thousands tuned in. When the camera light blinked red, I took a deep breath and began. I am not here to shame my family, I said gently. I am here to remind others that love should never be blind, not even to your own blood. I told everything. The trust clause Henry designed, the recordings, the forged loan, the courtroom confession. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I simply told the truth, like reading from a book already written. Then I paused and looked straight into the camera. People ask me if I hate them, I said. The truth is, hate is too heavy for these old shoulders. But I'll tell you what I do carry, memory. And memory is stronger than any revenge. I leaned closer, lowering my tone. So to anyone out there who's been betrayed by their own, remember this. Kindness is not weakness. Silence is not surrender. And even an old woman can turn deceit into justice, if she stays patient enough. Ruth's hand squeezed mine off camera, her eyes glistening. When the segment aired that night, it spread beyond our town. People online shared it with captions like, "The grandma who fought back," and "Justice with grace." But Clara saw it too. 2 days later, I got another call from the county sheriff. "Mrs. Lane, we thought you should know. We intercepted letters Clara tried to send from jail. They were addressed to a friend in another state, asking him to forge documents and claim your property again under a new trust." I let out a weary sigh. Still scheming, even in chains. "Yes, ma'am," he said. "But this time it's federal fraud. She'll be going away for a long while." After the call ended, I sat back in silence. For the first time in months, I felt the true weight of finality settle over me. The war was ending. Not with shouting, but with the slow crumble of everything Clara had built on lies. A week later, Ethan came by unannounced. His face was pale, his eyes sunken. He stood on the porch, hat in hand, like a boy asking forgiveness. "I watched your interview," he said. "You spoke like Dad used to. Calm. Honest." "I learned from him," I said softly. "And I hoped you would too." He looked down. "I was blind, Mom. She made me believe you didn't trust me, that you were trying to control everything. I see now it was her fear, her greed talking. Not love. Love doesn't hide behind lies," I said. He nodded slowly. "I know. I'm trying to start over. I got a job at the hardware store in town. I can pay you back, somehow." I reached for his hand. "You can't repay a mother, Ethan. You can only redeem yourself." Tears welled in his eyes. "Can I at least come for Sunday dinner?" I smiled faintly. "If you bring dessert." He laughed through his tears. It was the first real sound of hope between us in years. That evening, I visited Henry's grave. The wind was warm, carrying the scent of the lilac bushes he'd planted behind the church. I laid a single rose and whispered, "It's over, my love." Justice came walking slowly, but it came. The sun dipped low, and the sky blazed orange and violet. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel alone. But before I left, I heard footsteps. Sarah approached, her heels crunching the gravel. "News just came through," she said, holding out her phone. "Clara accepted a plea deal. She's facing 12 years. I nodded, my voice calm. "Let her have her peace behind walls. Maybe she'll find her conscience there." Sarah smiled. "And you?" "I've already found mine," I said. "Right where it always was, buried under betrayal, waiting to breathe again." That night, as I closed the curtains and blew out the last candle, a letter slid through my door. No return address. Just one line on the paper inside. "Forgive me, Mother. I found something you should see, about Clara's last plan." My hands trembled. Ethan's handwriting. The story wasn't quite done. The letter lay in my lap like a living thing, small, folded, and pulsing with unanswered questions. I turned it over in my hands, feeling the faint indentation of Ethan's handwriting. The house was quiet, the kind of silence that magnifies every breath, every thought. I unfolded the paper slowly and began to read. "Mom, I found this while sorting through the boxes Clara left behind. It's a notarized document, and signed but dangerous. It looks like she planned to transfer the house to a fake buyer, a friend of hers in another county. If she'd succeeded, you would have lost everything again. I wanted you to know I took it straight to Sarah. I'm sorry for what I did. I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make it right. Ethan." My chest tightened, but not from anger. From relief. My son, my foolish, misguided boy, had finally stepped into the light. The next day, I met Ethan and Sarah at the law office. Sarah held up the document. "He's right. It's a half-finished fraud attempt. But since she never filed it, and now she's under federal supervision, this is just another nail in her coffin." Ethan looked at me hesitant. "I didn't want to come here, but when I found it, I knew if I hid it, I'd be no better than before." I reached across the table, placing my hand over his. "That's how redemption begins, not by erasing the past but by facing it." For the first time in years, his smile reached his eyes. Weeks passed, and life began to feel gentle again. I planted flowers in the front yard, repainted the kitchen, and even reopened Henry's old workshop. The sound of wood against the saw, the smell of cedar, it brought him back to me in small, beautiful ways. Ethan started visiting every Sunday, just like he used to when he was little. He brought pastries, stories from work, and a shy kind of laughter that healed us both a little each time. One afternoon, while we were having tea on the porch, he asked, "Do you ever regret fighting back, Mom?" I looked out over the hills, golden in the afternoon light. "No," I said. "I regret trusting the wrong people for too long. But fighting back wasn't revenge, it was protection. For Henry's memory. For what he built. For me." He nodded, staring down at his cup. "Do you think Clara will ever change?" "Maybe," I said softly. "Some people learn when they lose everything. Others only learn when no one is left to hurt." We sat in silence for a while, letting the wind carry our words away. One Sunday, I invited Ruth and Sarah to dinner. The table was full again, roast chicken, laughter, clinking glasses, the hum of life returning. As I looked around, I realized how betrayal, though cruel, had given me something unexpected: clarity. Ruth toasted with her glass of lemonade. "To Margaret," she said, "for reminding us that wisdom doesn't come from age, it comes from courage." I smiled. "And patience," I added, "because revenge may glitter, but justice, true justice, shines quietly." They all laughed, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I joined them without a shadow in my heart. That night, after everyone had gone home, I stood on the porch once more. The moonlight spilled over the fields, soft and silver. I whispered, "Henry, it's done. They thought they could take our home, but they only taught me how strong love becomes when it's betrayed." The wind rustled through the lilacs like an answer. When you give your heart to family, you give them your past, your trust, your legacy. Sometimes they treasure it. Sometimes they break it. But if you stay silent in the face of injustice, you hand them your future too. And that is something no mother, no grandmother should ever surrender. Forgiveness is not weakness. It's wisdom wearing armor. And justice? Justice is simply love remembering its worth. They thought I was weak, but wisdom never fades. What lesson do you take from this story? Como bilo? And if you believe that truth always finds its way home, like and subscribe, because every grandmother has a story worth hearing.